just to continue, since we don't have tons of time, the UN climate report has been a real wake-up call, I think, for all of us, a real prise de conscience. If we believe this report, and it's only the latest of many reports, the world has less time to screw around on climate change than people thought. And we have, I think, the great privilege of having 5 heads of state with us to help discuss this whole issue. I'm very pleased, just so you know who will be coming up. We have the President of the Republic of Congo, Denis SASSOU-NGUESSO. We have the Prime Minister of Denmark, Lars LØKKE Rasmussen. We have the President of Kenya, Uhuru KENYATTA, great name. We have the President of Djibouti, Ismaïl Omar Guelleh. And we have the President of the government, the Prime Minister of Spain, Senor Pedro SANCHEZ. So if I could just ask you gentlemen to come take your seats. And the way I will try to do this is, in that order, I'm going to ask everyone a question and ask them to keep their responses to 3 minutes or so. And then we will come to the audience for your questions. I would only ask you, when you ask questions, try to direct them to a particular head of state instead of just vague questions. That would help quite a lot. So, I will begin with Monsieur SASSOU-NGUESSO. You've been President of the Republic of Congo since at least 1997. And the issue of climate change, I think, clearly matters. And I wondered, what are the greatest obstacles you face in trying to deal with this coming calamity? And do you think there's a big division between the problems of Africa and the problems of other parts of the world? Monsieur.
Je vous remercie beaucoup. Je pense qu'après avoir écouté les discours du président Macron, celui de la chancelière d'Allemagne et celui du secrétaire général des Nations Unies, le décor est planté. En ce qui concerne le Congo, je dois surtout dire que le Congo est un pays au centre du bassin du Congo et que le bassin du Congo, c'est cette partie du monde qui protège pour l'humanité entière 220 millions d'hectares de forêt, le bassin du Congo. 220 millions d'hectares de forêt, c'est une contribution immense. Et les 17 États qui ont lancé dans le cadre de la commission climat du bassin du Congo le projet de fonds bleu, c'est-à-dire ce fonds qui devrait contribuer non seulement à la protection de ces 220 millions d'hectares de forêt, mais à promouvoir le développement. Et ce fonds bleu n'a pas encore obtenu le soutien de la communauté internationale. Nous voulons que la communauté internationale se rende compte de ce que le bassin du Congo protège 220 millions d'hectares de forêt et contribue donc à l'effort de lutte contre les changements climatiques. Et nous constatons que depuis Copenhague jusqu'à aujourd'hui, en passant par Cancun, Durban, Rio, plus 20, etc., on parle de fonds pour les forêts. On parle de 100 milliards de dollars par an pour soutenir les pays en développement et il ne se passe rien. Et nous disons que cela est un obstacle majeur, un obstacle grave. Et l'on demande à ces pays de faire à eux seuls l'effort de protection de ces 220 millions d'hectares de forêt sans contrepartie. Comme si, je répète les propos d'un dirigeant de ce monde qui disait, bon, est-ce qu'on veut seulement qu'un habitant de l'Amazonie meure de faim au pied d'un arbre, pourvu que l'arbre soit là pour l'humanité? Lui, au pied de l'arbre, il peut mourir de faim et de maladie. Donc, nous disons qu'il y a le bassin du Congo, il y a le projet du Fonds bleu. Nous demandons à la communauté internationale de regarder ce projet parce que ce projet contribuera à la protection de 220 millions d'hectares de forêt et contribuera au développement durable dans cette partie de l'Afrique. Et je pense que là, nous sommes dans l'axe de tout ce qui a été dit tout à l'heure. Deuxièmement,
c'est clair.
Deuxièmement, une minute.
Oui.
Deuxièmement, dans ce même bassin du Congo, nous venons de découvrir les tourbières. 145 500 km² de tourbières qui contribuent énormément à l'amélioration du climat aujourd'hui. Et nous lançons un appel aussi pour que la communauté internationale s'intéresse à cette question des tourbières dans le bassin du Congo.
Parfait.
Je crois que je n'ai pas abusé de votre
bien,
temps.
Monsieur. Merci bien. Thank you, Mr. President. We've just heard a very clear example of how interests differ and an appeal to the larger world community for help and for cooperation. Mr. Rasmussen is the Prime Minister of a country that does a great job with the environment, a lot of sustainable energy. I was there at the Copenhagen summit, and I think you get 46% of your energy from wind and other sustainable projects. So Denmark is a good example of what one smaller country can do, but it's a larger problem. So, Mr. Rasmussen, if I can ask you, how can the international community help to solve these problems, this kind of problem, and what do you feel the most urgency about? Please, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will try to be brief because I know it's your clear intention to finish at 6 o'clock. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we are a pretty sustainable country. We have, since I was born, we have doubled our prosperity without any significant increase in CO2 emission. And that's due to the fact that we have invested heavily in renewables. On windy days, we produce more electricity than we actually need in Denmark. And that, I think, give us advantages, but also a responsibility to cooperate with other countries who do not necessarily have to repeat the mistakes we made in the past. And it's all about international cooperation, and I think that's important to emphasize on a day like this, where we commemorate the end of the First World War, and not only was the war a disaster, the peace process in the aftermath of the First World War was a disaster as well, and led to the Second World War. But after the Second World War, we actually managed to build up an international architecture, United Nations, the European Union, etc. And what we realize these days is that some are beginning to question all this. And we don't need that. We need stronger international cooperation for many good reasons. And fighting climate change is, of course, one of the most important ones. I think what we should do is to ensure that this is not only a cooperation between countries, but also between NGOs, civil society, and businesses. And what we can offer as a small country, where we have gained our prosperity by being in interaction with the rest of the world, and where we have built a welfare state due to consensus in our society, and the ability to cooperate within our society between different sectors, is to introduce that model and at the international scene. So most recently, we took the initiative to create a new international network together with the 7 other countries called P4G, partnering for the global goals and green growth. We just most recently had a very successful summit in Copenhagen, where we gathered more than 800 business people and politicians. And the idea is to be concrete and to turn talks into action. So what we are doing is that we try to establish network between countries, cities, among them C40, the biggest cities on the planet Earth, and businesses and regulators. One concrete project is, for instance, to create a kind of internal electricity market in the southern part of Africa, mirrored in what we have achieved in the Nordic countries, because the reason that we can invest in wind and still feel, sure on the days where the wind don't blow, is the fact that we established a Nordic electricity market many years ago, together with Sweden and Norway. And if we could introduce these kind of models in the sub-Saharan region, we could create a bigger incentive to invest in renewables in Africa. So I'm a Scandinavian. I'm not a warm-blooded politician. I'm into pragmatic solutions, and I think in that regard, Denmark have something to offer.
That's great, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you very, very much. I think, given the source of the problem, pragmatic solutions is what we need. We've had quite a lot of rhetoric. We've had a lot of words. We need a kind of urgency. I mean, as we remember the first war, we have a different kind of war on our hands, and it's quiet and it's expensive. So the next person is the President of Kenya, Mr. KENYATTA. And I would like to ask you, do you feel the same sort of urgency that some of the Scandinavian and other countries feel? And at home in Kenya, what is the most pressing problem of climate change for you? Is it drought, migration, overpopulation? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. We're here today to commemorate 100 years since the end of World War I, a great catastrophe for the world, a situation brought about by growing nationalism, which resulted in the destruction of the lives of over 17 million people. Soon after that, as has been said, there was an attempt to try and move towards dialogue, and ultimately, even after World War II, the creation of the United Nations, to start allowing people to talk to one another as a way of resolving problems. The problem, as I see it today, is twofold. We're once again now moving back instead of learning from the lessons of the past. we're moving back to thinking inward again. And as you've said in your statement, we have a major, major problem on our hands. But yet today, despite the scientific information available, there are still those who will say that climate change is not a problem. And those that lead that chorus are actually those who contribute greatest to the problems that we're facing. And unfortunately for us, we are the ones who have taken the biggest burden. We have seen an increase in droughts, we have seen an increase in flooding, all of this causing massive destruction. At the same time, we have the other problem, which is we are also at a time where we are still a developing country. We need energy. We need all of these things that the West already has in order for us to be able to achieve our social economic agenda as nations. We need resources to be able to do this. And I believe that we can achieve it while still ensuring we protect our environment through the use of renewables. And I think Kenya is a perfect example of that. You've said that 40% of your energy in Denmark comes from renewables. In Kenya today, 60% of our energy comes from renewables. And we're moving in that direction. What does that tell us? There is an economic opportunity for FDI to invest in green energy and help us achieve our desire to grow our economies, to create jobs for our people, and to move forward while still protecting the environment. But those resources are equally not forthcoming. So we find ourselves in a very serious catch-22 situation. We recognize that there is a problem, we lack the resources, and these resources is not, as I'm saying, we're looking for free money. We're looking for investment. Investment in the right type of technology that helps us achieve our energy needs, which helps then power our economy, create jobs, and ultimately that is the protection that the Western world also requires, because more jobs, more prosperity on the African continent means less problems of migration even into Europe. But this isn't going to happen if we continue looking inward as opposed to looking at how can we actually come together and solve these problems that we have by pulling the resources that we have together. So mine is really an appeal that we need to stop this protectionism, this inward thinking. We need to use the multilateral system much more to deal with these problems and to recognize that by dealing with them at source, by helping us, like I'm saying, achieve our power needs, by helping us create jobs, we're also solving other problems that are affecting the rest of the world. So I think this is what I'd like to say in my intro.
Thank you, President Kenyatta. I think you've put your finger on the great dilemma, which is how you help the climate, but you also improve the lives of all of your people, including the ones who are not so rich. And I think that's an enormous dilemma that I hope we can talk about. President GUELLEH, President of Djibouti, in a way you're caught between the drought on one side and the rising seas on the other side. So what's your big problem? Where do you need help? So just speak right into the microphone. Yes, it's fine. It works. Samash.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Pour ma part, je voudrais dire que on nous a demandé de choisir un livre, n'est-ce pas, pour la circonstance. Nous avons choisi le livre du philosophe Pierre Rabhi, qui est consacré entièrement à l'écologie, à l'environnement, et qui dit qu'il y a un danger mortel, puisqu'on parle de paix mondiale. Un des facteurs qui va précipiter notre planète vers la guerre, c'est le danger de la surabondance, de la surexploitation et du dessèchement de la terre n'est-ce pas, des changements climatiques. Cette planète que nous aimons tous et qui est la seule à nous faire vivre est en train de mourir par nos propres moyens, par nos fautes, par notre appétit et notre course vers un faux bien-être. Pour notre part, nous avons choisi ce livre parce que nous sommes l'un des plus petits pays et les plus pauvres. Donc, c'est la part du colibri, les petits oiseaux, les plus petits oiseaux au monde, les minuscules oiseaux qui essayent d'éteindre un feu, la planète qui est en feu, avec son bec qui va aller chercher un bout d'eau pour... et si chacun d'entre nous fait sa part du travail, nous pouvons arriver un jour à stopper cette destruction massive que nous voyons nous-mêmes. Pour cela, la sécheresse endémique, nous la vivons. L'eau, la terre qui se dessèche, la pénétration de l'eau de mer, tout cela complique la vie et aussi augmente la pauvreté et la misère. Nous avons du potentiel, n'est-ce pas, en géothermie, nous avons un potentiel important en énergie éolienne et solaire. Nous essayons de les exploiter, nous avons déjà commencé. Et puis l'interconnexion entre l'Éthiopie et nous. Mais c'est un effort mondial qu'il faut et une prise de conscience que notre planète est en train de partir. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Prime Minister of Spain, Western country, having its own issues with employment, with growth. The same issue, not only do you need to protect your own economy, but you need to protect the climate, and ideally we need to help the rest of the world too. So if I can just ask you, what are the biggest obstacles you face? What are your priorities as you look at this climate crisis? And so use the microphone and speak into the microphone.
Sí, buenas tardes. Encantado de estar en el Foro por la Paz, dar la enhorabuena al Gobierno de Francia por haber organizado este evento. Bueno, ¿cuáles son las distintas dificultades en las que nos encontramos todos los gobiernos que estamos aquí presentes cuando hablamos del cambio climático? Estando en Francia, habría que recordar los tres ideales de la Revolución Francesa: la libertad, la igualdad y la fraternidad. Y creo que en buena medida lo que habría que reivindicar es la fraternidad. Es uno de los bienes más preciados ahora mismo en la política y también, a mi juicio, en la sociedad, pero no se reivindica lo suficiente por parte de los líderes políticos. Yo creo que es importante reivindicar la fraternidad, esto es, ponerse en la piel y en los zapatos de personas que viven a miles de kilómetros y de saber que su suerte también, o de su suerte también depende tu suerte. Y en consecuencia, hablar de cooperación, como ha hecho por ejemplo el primer ministro danés, hablar de que la lucha contra el cambio climático y la adaptación al cambio climático nada tiene que ver con una cuestión de países ricos, sino que tiene que ver con una cuestión de desarrollo sostenible en el medio y en el largo plazo, es fundamental. Por tanto, yo creo que uno de los principales obstáculos que tenemos es el de que tenemos que reivindicar entre todos la fraternidad. Eso tiene mucho que ver con el multilateralismo. y en definitiva, con una batalla que tenemos que dar a aquellas políticas y a aquellos políticos que lo que hacen es plantear un retroceso de ese multilateralismo, un debilitamiento del multilateralismo, como gran paradigma Naciones Unidas, pero también en el continente europeo, la Unión Europea. Y el segundo tendría que ver con la solidaridad intergeneracional. Esa es la segunda dificultad que yo veo. Vivimos en un mundo en el cual no solamente la política, sino también los agentes económicos, los agentes sociales, el día a día de la ciudadanía está muy en el presente y poco en el futuro. Y creo que tenemos que empezar a trasladar desde los actores políticos una visión de la misma, de la acción pública, del medio y el largo plazo. Es decir, no hablar tanto de las luces cortas en los coches, sino de las luces largas, de que tenemos que poner luces largas para poder hacer frente a muchos de los desafíos que tenemos en el corto, en el medio y en el largo plazo. Y también ser conscientes de que tenemos que ser fraternales con las personas que hoy viven en cualquier parte del planeta, pero que tenemos también que ser fraternales y solidarios con aquellas generaciones que merecen disfrutar de un planeta al menos de la misma calidad que ahora mismo nosotros estamos teniendo. Por tanto, yo creo que las dos grandes dificultades en términos, yo diría que de principios, es la falta de fraternidad, o al menos de no su reivindicación diaria que deberíamos hacer, y en segundo lugar, el de reivindicar la solidaridad y en especial la solidaridad intergeneracional. ¿Qué es lo que estamos haciendo nosotros? Bueno, pues yo creo que a mí me gusta mucho hablar de la transición ecológica de la economía, no hablar solamente de la transición ecológica de nuestro sistema energético. Creo que tenemos que hablar de energía circular, de economía circular, creemos que tenemos que hablar de energías renovables, creemos que tenemos que impulsar una industria de los residuos también muy importante para empezar a reutilizar muchas de las cosas que simplemente gastamos de un día para otro. En definitiva, yo creo que es un cambio de paradigma. Y creo que además la Unión Europea está dando pasos firmes en ese sentido. Por tanto, yo creo que cooperación y transición ecológica de la economía son los grandes motores de este gran desafío que tenemos por delante, que es el cambio climático.
Gracias. Gracias. Thank you to all of these leaders for engaging with the topic. It's a complicated topic. It's an urgent topic. We don't have tons of time because it got started late, and some of these gentlemen will need to leave. So what I'm going to do is ask for some questions. I'm going to take 3 questions. There should be microphones, otherwise no one will be able to hear you. And then try, if you can, identify yourself, please. And then also try to address one question to one leader. Don't just ask a general question. So first, the lady with the phone in her hand.
Hello, thanks a lot for giving me the floor.
Identify yourself.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Frédéric Röder. I'm EU and France director at the One Campaign, which is an international organization fighting extreme poverty. And I would like to direct a question to Prime Minister Rasmussen and President Sanchez. You both spoke about the need for international cooperation, about fraternité, solidarity. And we know that today to be able to fight climate change, especially in the poorest countries, requires more international ODA, official development assistance. And at the moment, you are negotiating the next 7-year budget for the European Union. So my question to you is, yes, are you going to support an EU budget that puts us on track to achieve the 0.7 target that we made a promise to achieve in 2030? So are you supporting a budget with 140 billion in aid for the EU over the next 7 years? Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could give the microphone to the gentleman with his hand up, thanks. And then
English.
We'll go back there.
Hello, my name is Jonah.
Yes, no, speak
My name is Jonah Whitcamper. I work with an organization called Nexus. It's probably the world's largest network of young philanthropists. We have young people from over 150 billionaire families involved.
Ask a question.
We convene with heads of state to unite philanthropists and young innovators. Here's the question. This is directed to the president of Congo. You mentioned the absence of financing. We have a proposal to create a new global cryptocurrency with that will have a financial transaction tax that pays for carbon sequestration. Would your country welcome the idea of this? Blockchain has been one of the greatest innovations. Bitcoin is already in wide use. There's an alternative to have a global civil society or world democracy managed alternative economy that pays for climate change.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And there's a woman in the back with the microphone.
Hi, I have a very quick question directed to the President of Kenya. You said that there are great investment opportunities in the area of renewables in your country, but that you don't have the resources domestically required. What do you think are the main obstacles? Why is it that foreign investors aren't coming? What's stopping that investment flow?
Okay, great, thank you. Why don't we go right to the panel? Mr. Kenyatta, do you want to just answer that question right away?
I think the first thing is lack of just knowledge of the opportunities that are actually available. And secondly, lack of actual support, because a lot of international firms looking into the African continent don't quite understand it. And this is why we keep saying that we need to be able to raise the bar in terms of getting people to understand what are these opportunities and how people can take advantage of these opportunities. Now that becomes very difficult when you have people who don't see renewables as a potential long-term investment. But what we're saying is it's working in Kenya. We have today the largest wind farm in Africa, which has been done by private sector investors with over 400 megawatts of energy. So I really think the key is to mobilize international resources and create awareness that there are these possibilities that are available. And this is where we would like to work with governments, with private sector organizations to get this information out and to show the available opportunities that exist. Furthermore, it would also be great if governments, as part of mitigation, could also support their companies and encourage their companies through different possible tax measures or whatever it is to encourage them to move into the African continent.
Great. Mr. SASSOU-NGUESSO, do you want to answer the question addressed to you, sir?
Oui. Il s'agit essentiellement de financements innovants. Et notre ami fait une proposition sur les taxes qui toucheraient les transactions financières. Nous ne pouvons qu'adhérer à une telle idée. Et déjà, je dois signaler que lorsqu'il s'était agi de la taxe sur les billets d'avion pour financer la lutte contre le paludisme, la tuberculose et le sida, le Congo a adhéré à cette initiative et a décidé d'une taxe sur les billets d'avion. Si tous les États du monde avaient adhéré à cette initiative, on aurait mobilisé des sommes considérables. Une toute petite taxe sur les billets d'avion. Quelques pays ont adhéré à cette initiative et des moyens importants ont été mobilisés qui ont permis de lutter contre le paludisme, la tuberculose et le sida. Donc, les financements innovants sont les bienvenus. Pourquoi ne réfléchirait-on pas sur une taxe sur les transactions dans le secteur pétrolier. Très peu de choses, quelques sens. On mobiliserait des moyens considérables. Donc, je souscris totalement aux propositions faites par notre ami tout à l'heure. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci. Mr. Rasmussen, do you want to answer your part, and then Mr. Sanchez?
Yes, it was a question about the ODA. Well, first of all, I would like to say that the European Union is not a country, but a union of countries, and each of these countries have to meet, if you ask me, the target defined by UN, investing 0.7% of GNI in ODA, and we do that in Denmark, and we have done that for more than 40 years. Unfortunately, we are among only, I guess, 5 or 6 countries around the world who do that. So I would like to take this opportunity to urge others to follow that example. In the European context, we also have to step up. I totally agree with what my friend KENYATTA said about not only shared responsibility, but also shared opportunities. Because I think we should invest more in Africa for humanitarian reasons, but also in our own self-interest. If we not assist Africa to take a more sustainable pathway into the future, where we give young Africans a hope for a brighter future, then we will see for generations to come a migration pressure on Europe. So whether you deal with this in an idealistic way or a pragmatic way, I think you will reach the same result or conclusion. We need to partnering up with Africa much more than we have done in the past. But, and I will keep this as brief as possible, it's not only about ODA. It's also about trade. It's about true partnership. I had the honor to chair Africa Commission set up by the Danish government a couple of years ago in close cooperation with the Africa Union, Mozambique and other African countries. And the conclusions were very, very clear that we can't just solve problems by ODA. We need a true partnership. And for that, I am optimistic about what we have started to achieve during the last couple of years, shadowed by the migration crisis. But then again, we have, at our Valletta meeting in Malta some years ago, agreed that we should establish these kind of closer cooperation between the European Union and specific African countries. And I think that's the way forward. But without money, it's not doable.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. Señor Sanchez.
Sí, gracias. Y siguiendo además lo que ha comentado el colega danés, decir que uno de los principales debates que ahora mismo hay en el Consejo Europeo, en la Unión Europea, es la política migratoria. La política migratoria tiene 3, digamos, patas. La primera es la de reforzar la cooperación y el diálogo con los países de origen y de tránsito de esa migración. La segunda tiene que ver con el control de las fronteras. Y la tercera tiene que ver con la gestión de la migración una vez llega al continente europeo. Pues bien, con relación a la primera de las patas, es decir, el reforzamiento de la cooperación y el diálogo con los países de origen y de tránsito, sobre todo en África, y viniendo además y siendo el presidente del gobierno de un país como España, que está en primera línea respecto a los flujos migratorios, lo que quiero decir es que, uno, la Unión Europea es el continente, la región que más recursos destina a la cooperación al desarrollo en el continente africano. Y esto tiene que seguir siendo así. Es más, en el debate que se ha tenido en el Consejo Europeo, lo que yo he podido compartir también con el primer ministro danés es un compromiso cada vez más elevado por parte de los gobiernos de los Estados miembros de la Unión Europea de seguir redoblando y reforzando nuestra cooperación al desarrollo con los países de África. Con lo cual, la respuesta a su pregunta es sí, pero no quería tampoco dejar pasar el por qué sí. Porque tenemos que seguir reforzando esa política también migratoria y sobre todo para ello lo que necesitamos es ayudar a que los países puedan crear sus oportunidades, como bien comentaba antes el presidente de Kenia.
Thank you very much. Now, we don't have a lot of time left, and some of the leaders need to leave about now. So if you have to go. Otherwise, it'll be another 8 minutes or so. So you decide. But It all got. I think we've come to an end, ladies and gentlemen. Merci à tous.